Today let's talk about the background character that ruined a writer's life after the inclusion of this one in the 2014 MLP Annual. Something that should have been just a fun cameo for an up-and-coming artist in the MLP community spiraled out of control, revealing a web of hypocrisy, disgusting, and worrying views of an artist. And in the process, tainting a respected writer's reputation and sparking a community outrage so big that IDW stepped in to try and solve it. This is the story of Princess Glitter Punch, the background character that ruined a writer's reputation and life. It all started in 2014 when the 2014 My Little Pony Annual came out. This issue focused on the Power Ponies and how they went from being acquaintances to each other to becoming a true team and friends, while at the same time defeating the newly formed League of Villainy with the power of friendship.
Oh my god! Wow!
Okay, not really. They actually defeated the League of Villainy thanks to deception, lies, and childhood trauma. Yes, really. But this is G4, so you know, friendship is magic. This issue was received extremely well. Fans loved the setting, the villains, the humor, and the characters. But one that stood out more than others was a background pony that appeared in just one page. This one being Princess Glitter Punch. While in the comic she had a brown coat and pink mane, this was a mistake on the artist's part, as originally she was meant to have a pink coat, purple and pink mane, and a pink tail. But the reason why she stood out wasn't for the best of reasons, as she was the OC of an artist called Cuteosphere. Cuteosphere was an up-and-coming artist at the time. She was present in the furry and MLP community, and on the surface she was a normal and very talented artist, especially at the time, with her art being a mix of colorful and cute with edgy and sometimes having very dark humor. But what made her art stand out from other artists was the quality of it. And I know that nowadays this art doesn't look that special, but back then there really wasn't a lot of art like this, which helped Cuteosphere to gather a relatively big and passionate fanbase, and in time she would even open her own online shop where she would sell t-shirts and stickers featuring her designs. And at this time, Cuteosphere could have become a very popular and respected artist, but sadly things aren't always as they seem to be. Dragon Dicks was a blog that Cuteosphere had, and it was a place where she would rant and express her very concerning views, from her getting angry because people were following her art that she posted on a public platform, to criticizing MLP and SFW and saying that it was beginning to be a problem in the MLP community, which, you know what, is a point that I could agree with, if it wasn't for the fact that she blamed male MLP fans for making this type of content, while at the same time that she was posting and making her own. Oh, and also being a very big supporter of Princess Molestia. So for those who don't know who Princess Molestia was, it was a very popular and long-running vlog back in the day, one that had a very creepy and uncomfortable version of Celestia who would abuse her power to get with everyone in her kingdom, if you know what I mean. And while this vlog sounds incredibly disturbing and disgusting, it surprisingly never got an SFW. At its best, it was a genuinely funny blog that gave us some pretty funny and iconic moments, and at its worst, it was a very uncomfortable and weird blog. Like, seriously weird. But for as weird and uncomfortable as this blog would get, I think we all knew that this type of behavior wasn't okay. Well, not Cuteosphere, because there were a lot of times that she not only defended what Molestia did, but also judged actual rape victims and criticized their way of coping and wishing that they would get raped again. But what Cuteosphere is mostly infamously remembered for was how she bragged about having connections with the staff on the show and the comics, which of course a lot of people just brushed off as lies. Or so we thought. Ted Anderson was a writer for the MLP comics and was a very respected figure among fans, not only for his stories, but also because he genuinely seemed to care about the fandom and fans. From him answering questions that fans had about certain characters and lore, to teasing future stories and even being one of the few people at the time who defended the idea of the comics being canon to the show. But what no one knew at the time was that Ted was a very big fan of Cuteosphere and even agreeing with some of her views on male MLP fans being gross. And he even bought a t-shirt from her shop with a design that back then was seen as anti-brony, with a message that read, "Literally anything before bros," which later he would wear on the launch of the Manhattan Mysteries. And ironically, this image and cameo would be the catalyst to one of the biggest outrages in the MLP community at the time. After the release of the comic, the backlash was almost instantaneous, one of the main reasons being that Cuteosphere was bragging that her OC was featured in the comic. And things didn't get better when fans discovered that the person who not only allowed it, but made it happen was Ted Anderson. Some fans would feel betrayed and confused of why someone that loved and actively wanted to improve the MLP community would let an anti-bron to be included in the comics. Others would directly attack both Ted and Cuteosphere, and others would go to IDW directly to demand the termination of Ted as a writer. And the first one who responded would be Bobby Conroy. "Hi everyone, I've been talking to Ted about the subject, more on that soon. I appreciate everyone's thoughts on the subject and allowing me the time to investigate. To reiterate, it's my and IDW's goal to make these comics as inclusive as possible to all people and ages. Obviously, the depiction of this background pony, regardless of intent, is counter to that goal. I will also discuss the subject of background ponies with the entire staff of the book. I always try to give the artists a good deal of freedom in this regard, as it is in my opinion that the more fun they're having drawing, the more fun will translate onto the page for the reader. That is obviously not what happened at all in this circumstance, and as such we will be reviewing what is and isn't acceptable. At the end of the day, we want these books to be fun, and if that isn't what's happening, we need to review our approach." And later, Ted would give his side of the story. Wow, this has become a much bigger issue than I ever expected. Let me say at the start that I didn't know of any blanket prohibitions of fan characters or cameos, but obviously this will be the last one I put on any of my comics. Frankly, I expected David Maguire's cameo to be more controversial, as his character got a name and a speaking line. I follow Cuteosphere and her work because I think she's an extremely talented artist, and I like the work she produces. Nothing she has done has struck me as outright hateful, just satirical, and anything I reblog I meant in the same spirit. Same goes for the t-shirt I bought, which to me just inverts a standard message of male solidarity as a form of culture jamming. I recognize how some of her work can be construed in a very negative way, but as far as I know, she only intended to be satire, not genuine hatred. I definitely don't hate any fans of the show or comic, and I certainly don't want to give that impression. Lastly, please keep in mind that it was completely my idea to put Cuteosphere's character into the comic. It had absolutely nothing to do with Bobby or Ben or Heather or anyone else at IDW. If you feel hurt by what I've done, I understand, but please don't take it out on the rest of the company. This response gave a lot of context to the situation, but at the same time there were some things that felt like excuses, like Ted trying to justify the inclusion of Princess Glitterpunch in the comic. Acid wasn't the only cameo, because the comic also had another OC by the name of Inky Quills, a character that was created by David Maguire. David was another artist that made MLP art and comics on Tumblr, but the big difference between him and Cuteosphere was that he wasn't harassing other people because of their gender. Another thing was the satirical defense. While yeah, you can have crude and edgy humor in your artwork, it's another thing to attack and harass a whole gender just because they like a cartoon about colorful horses. And also David's art was clearly more humorous than Cuteosphere's. I mean, this is satirical and funny, this isn't. But in the end, Ted would respond one more time, where he basically said that reverse sexism didn't exist and that it was ridiculous. And in the end, this situation died off as quickly as it began, although there still were fans that continued to email IDW and demanding the termination of Ted as a writer. And at one point there was even someone confirming that indeed Ted was fired from the staff. But this wasn't true, and in reality, despite Ted breaking the rules and including a fan OC and an official piece of work, he continued to work in the MLP comics all the way to 2019. Although his reputation would never recover, and even new allegations would come out years later, although they were never followed up. As for Cuteosphere, she continued to be in the MLP community until 2015, where she continued to post art until she purged her entire Tumblr page in fall of that year. Although some of her artwork and messages have been archived over the years. But this isn't where the story ends, because something surprising would happen. Something that surprised me while doing research for this video was that Princess Glitterpunch found another spark of life in the MLP fandom, although to a smaller degree, with fans making fan arts, new developments to her character, and even some fan-made merch. And while it makes me happy that despite all of the things that this character went through, she did find a small and passionate fanbase, but it also makes me question if she deserves it in the first place. Because can we forgive everything that this character stands for, which is hate, harassment, and sexism, one that represents a horrible person, and one that affected a lot of fans emotionally and mentally? Or can we move on and separate the art from the artist and adore this character for her design, colors, and potential? Well, that decision is up to you to make. Well, tell me what do you guys think of this situation and character in the comments. And as always, remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and consider subscribing for more MLP videos like this one. And remember to take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video.